there we have the introduction page, title, introduction, plan, a map, which I think is quite important for this subject, and a Gladstone flight cover. If you're going to do this subject, you would expect a Gladstone cover to be in. Captain Tony Gladstone, who did a lot of the early flying in this area. One thing missing, of course, no references, which should be there. Move on to the second page. We have another huge error. You can't put covers up that way, and also it's not a good idea to just overlap things so you can't see half of the picture. But an RAF flight, Zanzibar RAF flight, quite a difficult one to find, so it's got a red board around it. Moving on, first regular air service to Kenya in March 1927. You do see some of these, and then an experimental flight from Cairo to Uganda in October 1927. So some of the early flights. The trouble with most of these are that they do tend to be philatelic. And we go on to the government proving flights here, and I've got 3 of these. The Tanganyika Government Air Service. Nearly all of the ones you find of these are to a man called Kota. Now Mr. Kota was a businessman, and he was also a collector, and so you find on the early flights a lot of Kota covers. They are philatelic ones, but as I say, they're very difficult to find anything else. And then on page 8 we have another experimental flight. Now this is a bit more difficult. Dar es Salaam to Mombasa. Again, needs big pages. You see, it's you don't really want to put things on their side like this. Going from there on to the development of Imperial Airways. Come out, you can see most of that. The special covers produced. Then Imperial Airways eventually to European destinations. And then much more interesting in many ways, those are the feeder services. Now some of these are really quite scarce, and it's often the scruffy covers that are the most difficult ones. There we have a Wilson Imperial, and going into the German Air Service. That's quite a difficult one, but again it's on its end, it should be on a big page. The feeder services, again, Wilson Tanganyika Government Air Service. The top one there, the one to Tanga, is a particularly difficult cover. Very few of those are recorded. More Wilson services here, and then going further afield to South Africa, Cape Town. Of course, East Africa was really en route to the main prize, which was the Southern African route. And then further afield, we've got another Kota cover, but quite a scarce one. This one going to Portuguese India. So there we have a 16-page airmail. Obviously far too big a subject for 16 pages, but nevertheless quite a pretty looking little survey of what is available. Now I mentioned Bill Colley's book. There we are, there it is. East African Airmails by Bill Colley. Lovely old man, really interesting to talk to. And that's what the thing was for, the Wakefield Philatelic Society, and it was a YPA entry in 2012. And it won the trophy, mainly because there was very little opposition, I suspect. Anyway, 4 minutes 44 and a slightly longer introduction. So there we have an airmail for you. The next one will be postal history.